involved with the MiG-17 fighter jets. So we were talking a little bit about Have Doughnut, Have Ferry, Have Drill, the MiG-17s and the capture of those, and what those meant to the Navy and to the Air Force. What did that mean? You've flown the F-4 before?
No, well, I fought against the F-4. I
haven't. Against the F-4.
Yeah, I've flown it.
This fighter obviously outmaneuvered, was responsible for lots of F-4 kills in Vietnam. What did the capture of this aircraft mean specifically to the Navy and to the Air Force?
Well, when in '67, late '67 or '68, when the aircraft were acquired by with the help of the Israelis, by the CIA, taken out to Area 51 and put together and flown. And the Navy, and you can look it up, it's called Have Drill, Have Doughnut, Have Ferry, as you mentioned, now available, you can Google it. I mean, it's, it was highly classified for a long time. They flew every aircraft in the inventory at that time, 68 era, Vietnam, A4, F8, A7, F4, 105, flew every aircraft. The Navy or Air Force flew against the aircraft and lost every first engagement against the MiG-17, which was designed in the early 50s and should by all practical standards be totally obsolete, no radar, etc. But what we found was we had nothing that would turn with it, and that was our Achilles heel and its strength. So one of the things that they figured out during the testing in the program was how to change our tactics so that we could improve our kill ratio, which was about 2 to 1 or so over the 17 at the time. In 1973, at the end of the war, or when we left, it was up to 14 to 1. So the tactics were very helpful. We learned, fight it below 23,000 feet was a bad idea. Fight it above that was a much better idea. Never turn with the aircraft. If you find yourself in a turning fight, separate. If you've got the gas for it, spin around, lock him up with a missile, and shoot him down and go talk about it when you get home, because you're going home. If you got into a turning fight with the aircraft and the adversary knew much what he was doing, it was probably going to be a bad day. So it's just a matter of learning your enemy and teach your enemy. So in the 70s, 74, 75, Gail Peck, call sign Evil, set up a program called the 4477th. It was codenamed Constant Peg, named after his wife Peggy, but known as the Red Eagles. It was also out in Tonopah, away from prying eyes. Interestingly enough, later on, when Lockheed Martin needed a place to develop and get the first operational squadron together with the Air Force of the F-117 Nighthawk, known as the stealth fighter, that became famous during Desert Storm 1, they also cohabitated the same hangar where the MiGs flew in the day and the F-117s would fly at night, so that prying eyes and press and whatnot couldn't see what they were doing out there. In that program, we operated a full squadron of MiG-17s, a squadron of MiG-21s, and most of a squadron of MiG-23s in California that our pilots, both Marine, Air Force, and Navy, could go and fight against and learn and practice tactics against the real airplane rather than another U.S. aircraft simulating the threat.
So we're going to see a demonstration of this today, we
hope.
So I understand you're the only American to own a low-level or unrestricted day and nighttime. Is that still true?
I'm the only demonstration pilot, I don't know about the world, but in North America, that holds an unlimited aerobatic rating for both day and night in jet fighters.
And what's it feel like 20 feet off the ground, 30 feet off the ground?
You just close your eyes and hope for the best. It's what I do. It's every maneuver we do, or that I do, perform today, they flow from one maneuver, from a high energy maneuver to another high energy maneuver to a low energy maneuver to a high energy maneuver, and move what we call the different lines in the box. We have a 500-foot line, a 1,500-foot line, etc. And those are determined by the FAA on how close we can get to the crowd at different speeds and into different maneuvers. And so the routine is kind of designed to go from one to the other. It's not really designed, even though I'm flying aerobatics, it's not really designed to be an aerobatic routine like you'd see a small propeller-driven aircraft. The idea is to also demonstrate the capability of the aircraft, show how tight the turning it is, show that you can do a very tight turn with the aircraft, which would normally bleed all the energy off the aircraft, and it would be in a defensive mode right there. And yet the 17 was the only aircraft of its era that could do that maneuver and still have the energy to go vertical out of it, which is in the fighter world was a huge deal at the time. The F-22 and so forth can do that with ease now, but at the time this aircraft was flying, it kind of set it apart and gave birth to later what became known as the Bantam Fighter Weapons competition, where the Air Force ultimately picked the YF-16, which became the F-16, so that we'd have a dogfighter like no one else. And the Navy picked one that morphed into what became the Hornet, the F-18.
So if you were to go in a two-circle with an F-16, would you be able to compete still?
At the right altitude and the right block series F-16, and the right two pilots, it could be somewhat competitive. The F-16's such greater thrust to rate ratio. It's a modern aircraft, obviously. You take the fight quickly into the vertical and defeat a 17 pretty quickly.
Kind of offset the two circles.
Yeah, but if you, in the case of like North Korea, they have a lot of them.
Right.
So if they launched in mass, which is kind of, I guess, their technique, you're not going to be able to fly very many days like doing that, but you can be effective for a day or two launching in mass. And of course, nowadays they have missiles on the airplane too, so they have the capability of not just being our patch in the airplane. We always call it the last of the gunfighter because it was really the last of their side, on their side, of aircraft that were produced strictly with guns. The very next version of the MiG, as they sequence went, were missile-carrying airplanes just like ours were.
Right.
So, through the 40s, 50s, 60s, and even today to some extent, there's kind of a tit for tat as they were climbing the ladder to one-up each other on the latest design aircraft and the latest design weapons and radar and sensors and so forth. So,
I understand early on in the MiG-17's life, the afterburner itself was a game changer.
Well, yeah. We had in 1947, Jaeger went through the sound barrier with the X-1 in October, and we had discovered the secret to that was as the shock wave goes along the airframe to move the entire tail, became a flying tail rather than a fixed with the elevator on the back of it, right? So this aircraft still has a fixed tail with an elevator. So it's marginally supersonic, but it did it with how the Russians do a lot of stuff, brute force.
Right.
So the British had come up with what they called reheat, afterburner,
right.
and the Russians had too, almost at the same time. But if you look at the evolution of stuff, we also put it on the F-86D and L, which was the latest version of the last version of the F-86, in response. But the Russians actually got the afterburner, if you will, into a combat aircraft first, trying to just force your way through this faster speed. We were doing it with finesse and engineering. So, but that gave us the next leap ahead because we discovered the finesse and the engineering behind going through that shock wave. Once we increased power, bigger engines, afterburner, so forth like that, we had a much better aircraft. The Russians went from this aircraft to the MiG-19, which is a dual engine, and was about a 1.3, 1.4 Mach aircraft with much greater swept wings, but it wasn't as effective in combat. Although it did carry missiles, it wasn't as maneuverable. So they had lost by trying to get just speed, they had lost some of the nimbleness out of the airplane, and they got some of it back with the MiG-21, which kind of was the first airplane with a really big engine, and what they call a compound delta wing with the tail. Kind of the evolution of the, it must have been interesting. I almost wished I was in that era, live in that era, or to be at Edwards during that time when every month or two the latest design airplane showed up for testing. That would have been really cool.
So I ask every demo pilot I engage with, if you can't fly the aircraft you're flying at, so you can't fly the MiG-17, what would you fly?
Everything else. Yeah, I've flown a lot of World War II stuff. It's kind of where I started. Our family has a ranch close to Breckenridge, Texas, which is the Azels have a phenomenal warbird restoration facility there. So as a kid, I'm flying over Corsairs when they were doing the TV show Bob Black Sheep. There were Corsairs out at the airport at the hangar I could go look at, So spent time around all that. Started flying air shows originally in World War II aircraft, of various styles and stuff forth. So now I've flown the T-33 and owned an F-86 and the MiGs, and so I don't know that there's a plane I don't want to fly.
Is there a chance we're going to see more for aircraft shows?
I hope so. 2 weeks ago we did the first one ever at Barksdale. That was I think it's a repeatable thing. It's expensive.
Right.
I mean, it is what it is. You burn a lot of gas with 4 jets. You need hotel rooms for the ground crew when you get that many airplanes and 4 airplanes. Now you have 8 drop tanks. I mean, everything becomes a multiple of what you got to have to support the aircraft. The Air Force at Barksdale did a phenomenal job. You know, they gave us a big nice row in the hangar with our own oxygen, nitrogen, and so forth, so like that. So we had the personnel, we just needed the equipment, and they did that. So it made it. We're going to fly a 3-ship at Dayton, Ohio this year. So that's pretty close to having all 4 jets at one
of my
place.
favorite air shows too.
Yeah. So we'll be there with a 3-ship, and I think at Tinker we're doing a 2-ship at Tinker this year in Oklahoma City. And I don't recall whether we do any more. No, we'll do one of them in New Jersey. I think that's a 2-ship. So, but to do a 4-ship that's pretty cool. Be able to do a diamond formation is really cool.
There's 3 Fs and a G. Is that right?
No, when we're flying the show, we do it all 4 of them are MiG-17Fs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought you had one with the radar.
We do. Well, we do and we don't. John Blanchett owned 620, which was based out of Elmira, New York, and it is a PF.
Oh.
It's a MiG-17-PF or a LIM 5P or something like that. I think that's the designation for it. And it was the first Soviet aircraft that carried rockets and had radar. It's the first, I guess, all-weather interceptor, if you will. They didn't build a lot of them because by the time they actually got it in the field, the MiG-21 was coming along, and it was a far superior aircraft, so it kind of had a short service life. That's the only one flying in the world. And I've been fortunate enough to be the only guy to fly one probably in this century. John passed away earlier last year, and so the aircraft's future is a little bit up in limbo to see what's going to future up for. It also won championship at Oshkosh for a restoration. He spent about 20 years on restoring it, and he was a retired Navy captain. He's also a retired engineer for GM, and he restored it like you would think any other engineer would restore it. I mean, it's about as perfect as you could ever make an airplane. First time I got in it, he made me wear those little surgical booties over my shoes before I climbed in it because he didn't want anything scratched or touched. He wanted it judged, at Oshkosh. And so I flew it one summer doing some regional air shows with it to kind of work out the kinks. And the next year we took it to Oshkosh where he won every prize it was in. And everything he was entered in, it won.
Fantastic. So how can people help support fighter jets? What's the best way to support what you guys do?
I mean, we have T-shirts, so forth on our website and so forth like that. But it's no big deal. It's fighterjets.com. Other than that, it's just come to the air shows. Love to meet you. I mean, it's the biggest paycheck I get is to talk to the kids, and I was that kid.
Right.
Walking through the crowd and getting to talk to a pilot. I always thought, I want to do that.
Right.
And I really wanted to do that. So I just figured out a way to, when I grew up, that I could do this. So I didn't have the money. I didn't come from a family that had a lot of money. So started out just working on airplanes and cleaning up oil and whatever they needed done. And anytime there was a ride available, I'd climb in the back or wherever I could to get a ride, and just wouldn't say no.
Cool. Thank you for your time.
No, you
I had
enjoyed
a great
it.
flight today. We're going to enjoy it as well.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.